As a reward, a human soldier received an alien woman slave. Captain Elias Ward stood in silence while the alien hall echoed with unfamiliar sounds. The chamber was vast, shaped like a half-open shell, its walls glowing with slow-moving lines of blue light. Tall figures from many species filled the space. Some floated, some walked on too many legs, others stood still, watching with eyes that never blinked. At the center of the hall, Elias was the only human. He wore his combat uniform, still marked with dust and burn scars from the last battle. The war had ended only 3 days ago, humanity's first major war beyond its own stars. Against all odds, they had won. The alien coalition had expected humans to break. Instead, humans adapted, learned, and pushed back harder every time. That alone had shocked the galaxy. Now came the reward. A tall alien official stepped forward. Its voice came through a translator, flat and cold. "Captain Elias Ward of Terra," it said. "By ancient interstellar custom, victory in total war grants spoils. Your species has earned recognition, and you, as commander of the decisive unit, are granted an honor." Elias felt uneasy. He had read enough briefings to know that alien customs often hid things humans would not accept easily. A side door opened. 2 guards led someone into the hall. She was smaller than most of the aliens present, humanoid but not human. Her skin was a pale silver blue, smooth and marked with faint lines that looked like natural patterns. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the light around her. She wore simple clothing, clean but plain, with no symbols or rank. A thin band circled one wrist. Elias recognized it instantly from intelligence reports. A control mark. The official continued. "This is Saley of the Keller species. Her people were defeated long ago and placed under lawful servitude. She is educated, compliant, and healthy. By our law, she now belongs to you." The word hit Elias like a physical blow. Belongs. Around the hall, several aliens nodded, clearly satisfied. This was normal to them, expected. A sign of respect. Elias felt his jaw tighten. His hands curled slowly into fists at his sides. He had faced plasma fire. He had watched ships explode. He had ordered men and women into danger. But this was different. Saley stood quietly, her posture straight. She did not struggle. She did not look afraid. Her expression was calm, almost empty, as if this moment had happened to her before in different forms. Her eyes met Elias' for just a second. There was no hope in them, only acceptance. Elias took a slow breath. He knew every camera in the chamber was watching. Every word would be recorded. Humanity's place in the galaxy was still fragile. One wrong move could turn victory into isolation or worse. The alien official raised one long finger. "Do you accept the reward?" Time seemed to slow. Elias thought of Earth. Of the laws humans lived by. Of the wars fought over freedom. Of the idea, deeply rooted in human history, that no one should ever own another thinking being. If he refused, it would be seen as an insult. Aliens did not understand symbolic refusal. They understood power and custom. Refusal could mean rejecting the victory terms themselves. If he accepted, he would be accepting ownership of a person. Elias lifted his head. "I accept," he said. A quiet sound moved through the hall, approval, satisfaction. Saley lowered her eyes, but Elias was not finished. "I accept the responsibility placed on me," he continued evenly. "I will take full legal charge of Saley under your laws." The official nodded. "It is done." A symbol appeared in the air, ownership transferred. The band on Saley's wrist glowed once, then dimmed. The ceremony ended soon after. Aliens began to leave, already turning their thoughts to trade, borders, and future wars. To them, the matter was complete. To Elias, it had just begun. Later, aboard the human ship Resolute, Elias stood in his private briefing room. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. Saley stood near the wall, hands folded calmly in front of her. The silence felt heavy. Elias turned slowly to face her. "My name is Elias Ward," he said. His voice was firm but controlled. "I am a soldier, not a master." She hesitated, then spoke. Her voice was quiet, smooth, and carefully polite. "I am Saley. I acknowledge your authority." The words sounded practiced. Elias shook his head slightly. "No. You don't need to say that here." Her eyes flickered with confusion. "This ship is under human command," Elias continued. "And on this ship, people are not property." Saley did not respond. She had heard words like this before, promises that meant nothing. Elias noticed her doubt and felt a sharp anger, not at her but at the system that had taught her not to believe. He tapped a control on the wall. A holographic display appeared showing human regulations. "You are not confined," he said. "You will have your own quarters. Medical care, food, education access. No one will touch you without your consent. No one will order you to perform labor." Her eyes widened slightly, just slightly. "That is not required," she said carefully. "I am capable of service." "I'm sure you are," Elias replied. "But I'm not interested in service." He paused, choosing his words. "I accepted you because refusing would have caused harm, but understand this, I will not treat you as a thing." For the first time, Saley looked directly at him. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple, honest. Elias answered just as simply, "Because I'm human." That night, alone in his quarters, Elias recorded a private log. "Day 1 after victory," he said. "The galaxy rewarded us with ownership of another sentient being. They expected gratitude." He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "They don't understand us, and maybe that's our greatest strength or our greatest danger." On another deck, Saley sat on a bed that was softer than any she had known. She examined the room carefully. No locks, no cameras she could see. A window showed stars moving slowly past. Freedom-shaped things that felt unreal. She touched the control band on her wrist. Still there, still active. Ownership still existed, but something had changed. For the first time in her life, her new master had asked nothing of her. And somewhere deep inside her, a small, fragile thought formed, one that had been trained out of her people long ago. What if this human truly means it? Far away, alien observers reviewed the recordings. They noted the strange behavior, the lack of commands, the absence of dominance. They did not understand it, but they marked it. Humanity had won a war. Now, quietly, without firing a shot, they were challenging something far older. The human ship Resolute moved quietly through open space, its engines steady and calm. Inside, life slowly returned to routine. Crews checked systems, shared meals, and sent reports back to Earth. But for Captain Elias Ward, nothing felt routine anymore. He stood in the command deck, watching stars slide past the wide window. Somewhere below, Saley was settling into a life that made no sense to her, and somewhere far away, the galaxy was watching him more closely than he liked. An officer approached. "Captain, Earth Command is requesting a secure update." Elias nodded. "Send it to my quarters." Saley walked slowly through the ship's corridor, guided by a small floating display that showed directions in simple symbols. She moved carefully, not because she was afraid of getting lost, but because she was afraid of doing something wrong. Every place she had lived before had rules, invisible ones. Breaking them brought punishment. This ship felt empty of rules. Crew members passed her, humans of different sizes, colors, and voices. Some nodded at her. One smiled and said, "Good morning." She stopped walking. The human had spoken to her like an equal. She did not answer. By the time she turned, the human was already gone. Saley resumed walking, her thoughts heavy. Later that day, Elias invited Saley to the briefing room. She arrived exactly on time, standing near the door as she had been trained. Elias noticed and felt a familiar tightness in his chest. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. She hesitated, then sat slowly. On the table between them, a hologram appeared. It showed a star map filled with symbols and lines. "This," Elias said, "is the known galactic legal system." Saley looked at him in confusion. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because it affects you," he replied, "and because you deserve to understand it." No one had ever said that to her. Elias pointed to a section of the map. "Your people, the Keller, were conquered over 400 standard cycles ago. Under galactic law, conquered populations can be placed into managed servitude." "That's the legal term." Saley nodded. "Yes. We are property, but protected property." "That phrase alone makes my skin crawl," Elias said quietly. She did not understand the expression, but she understood the tone. Elias continued. "The law says slaves must be fed, housed, and not destroyed without cause. But it also says owners have full authority over movement, labor, and speech." He looked at her. "That includes me." Saley folded her hands tighter. "Then why do you not use it?" Elias leaned back. "Because the law is wrong." She stared at him. "No one says that," she said. "The law is older than most stars." "That doesn't make it right," Elias replied. "It just makes it powerful." Saley considered this carefully. Her people respected age. Old things survived because they were strong. Humans thought differently. That night, Saley slept again. But this time, she dreamed. She dreamed of standing in a hall like the one from the ceremony. Only this time there were no guards, no chains, no control bands. She spoke freely and others listened. She woke suddenly, heart racing. Dreams like that were dangerous. Elias sat in his quarters, speaking with Earth Command through a secure channel. Several faces appeared on the screen: admirals, diplomats, legal advisors. "You did what you had to," one admiral said. "Refusing the reward would have caused a political incident." "But accepting it creates another one," Elias replied. "I now legally own a person," the diplomat sighed. "We understand your discomfort, but Captain, humanity is a newcomer. We cannot challenge every galactic custom at once." "I'm not asking to challenge everything," Elias said. "Just this." Silence followed. Finally, the legal advisor spoke. "Under current treaties, Earth cannot force the abolition of servitude outside human space." "I know," Elias said, "but there are loopholes." Several eyebrows raised. "The law allows owners to define the role of their property," Elias continued. "I've defined Saley as a protected non-combatant civilian under my command." "That's unusual," the advisor said. "It's legal," Elias replied, "and I plan to document everything, her history, her culture, her testimony." The diplomat frowned. "You realize this could attract attention." "That's the point," Elias said calmly. Attention came faster than he expected. 2 days later, an alien observation envoy arrived. Their ship docked without ceremony. 3 representatives boarded the Resolute. They were tall, thin, and sharp-featured. Their eyes missed nothing. Elias met them in the briefing room. Saley stood beside him, not behind. One of the aliens spoke. "Captain Ward, we have received reports of irregular behavior regarding your property." Elias crossed his arms. "Define irregular." "You do not issue labor commands. You allow unsupervised movement. You permit speech without authorization." Elias nodded. "Correct." "That violates the spirit of servitude," the alien said. "Show me where it violates the law," Elias replied. The alien paused. Saley watched silently, her heart pounding. She had never seen someone speak this way to authority. The second alien spoke. "You are weakening a stable system." Elias looked at them evenly. "Or exposing a fragile one." The third alien turned its gaze to Saley. "Do you feel mistreated?" All eyes moved to her. This was a test. Saley felt fear rise inside her. The control band was still on her wrist. The law was still real. One wrong word could end everything. She looked at Elias. He said nothing. He did not signal. He did not command. He trusted her. "I am fed," Saley said slowly. "I am unharmed. I am allowed to learn and speak." She hesitated, then added, "This is different." The aliens exchanged glances. "That is not an answer," one said. "It is the only honest one," Saley replied. The room went very quiet. After the envoys left, Elias exhaled slowly. "That was risky," he said. Saley nodded. "I know." He looked at her, surprised. "You didn't have to speak." She met his eyes. "You gave me a choice." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I guess I did." Across the galaxy, reports spread. A human captain who owned a slave but did not command her. A slave who spoke in front of officials. A system behaving incorrectly. Some dismissed it as a human misunderstanding. Others saw danger. Because if humans treated slaves as people, then the question followed naturally. Why weren't they always treated that way? That night, Saley stood at the viewing window again. Stars stretched endlessly before her. The band was still on her wrist. The law was still there, but something new existed too. Hope. And hope, she was beginning to understand, was far more dangerous than fear. The Resolute received more data requests than any human ship in the sector. Alien observers watched crew movement. Diplomatic messages arrived daily, filled with polite words and sharp questions. Captain Elias Ward felt the pressure every hour. He stood on the command deck, reading a new report projected in the air. "Another complaint," his first officer said, "filed by the Threx Combine. They claim you are damaging interstellar tradition." Elias gave a short laugh. "That tradition damages people." The officer hesitated. "Sir, they don't see it that way." "I know," Elias said. "That's why this matters." Saley spent most of her days learning, not because she was ordered to, because she wanted to. The ship's education system adjusted to her quickly. It translated human language into patterns she could understand. History lessons, science basics, cultural records. She learned about Earth, about wars fought over freedom, about laws written after terrible mistakes, about humans arguing endlessly over what was right, but still trying. This confused her. Her people believed law existed to end argument. Humans believed argument existed to improve law. She often paused during lessons, staring at the screen in silence. One day, a human engineer noticed. "You okay?" he asked gently. Saley looked at him. Why do humans record their failures? The engineer smiled. So we don't pretend they didn't happen. She considered that long after he left. Elias called Saley to the briefing room again. This time there were documents waiting. I need your help, he said. Saley stiffened slightly. What kind of help? Truth, Elias replied. Your people's history, what happened after they were conquered, what servitude really means. She lowered her eyes. That knowledge is not requested. I'm requesting it, Elias said. As a person, she looked up slowly. If I speak freely, there may be consequences. I know, Elias said, for both of us. Silence filled the room, then Saley nodded. My people once explored stars, she said quietly. We had cities in orbit, art, philosophy, debate. Elias listened without interrupting. When we lost the war, she continued, we were not destroyed. That was called mercy. Our leaders were removed. Our children were educated for usefulness. Memory of resistance was discouraged. Erased? Elias asked. Controlled, Saley replied. Hope was labeled dangerous. Elias felt anger rise again, steady and cold. He recorded everything. Days later, Elias made a decision. He issued a formal declaration through galactic channels. Saley was officially reclassified, not as labor, not as property in function, but as a protected cultural witness under human responsibility. It was legal. Barely. The response was immediate. An emergency tribunal was announced. The tribunal chamber was smaller than the Victory Hall but heavier with tension. Alien judges hovered or stood in a wide circle. Observers filled the edges. Elias stood alone at the center. Saley was allowed to be present, but not to speak unless questioned. The lead judge spoke. Captain Ward, you are accused of neglecting your slave and undermining galactic stability. Elias straightened. I deny neglect. I challenge the definition. Murmurs spread. Explain, the judge ordered. Elias spoke clearly. You define ownership as total control. Humans define responsibility as protection. I am meeting all legal requirements. Food, shelter, safety, education. You deny labor, another judge said. She is not a tool, Elias replied. She is a thinking being. That is irrelevant, the judge snapped. It is central, Elias said calmly. Saley watched, heart pounding. No one had ever spoken this way here. The judge turned its gaze to her. Do you suffer under this human? Saley felt the room close in. This was another test. She remembered the dream, the stars, the silence of fear. I do not suffer, she said. I am allowed to choose. The chamber erupted in noise. Choice is not permitted, one judge shouted. Elias raised his voice. Show me where the law forbids kindness. Silence followed. No one answered. The tribunal ended without resolution. That alone was unheard of. Elias returned to his ship knowing things had changed. He had not won, but he had not lost. That night, Saley approached Elias on the observation deck. Why do you continue? She asked. You risk punishment. You risk your species. Elias looked out at the stars. Because if we don't draw a line somewhere, we become part of the system. She thought of her people, silent, enduring. What if the line breaks? She asked. Elias smiled sadly. Then at least it breaks trying. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. A human captain refusing to act like an owner, a slave who spoke in court, a law that could not explain itself. Other slaves watched quietly and wondered it made it larger. After the unresolved hearing, the Resolute was ordered to remain in neutral space. No jumps, no combat drills, no weapons active. The message was polite, but the meaning was clear. You are being watched. Captain Elias Ward accepted the order without protest. He knew pushing harder now would only give his critics what they wanted, but waiting did not mean stopping. Saley noticed the change immediately. The ship felt quieter. Conversations lowered when she passed. Crew members were careful, respectful, but tense. She understood enough human behavior now to know something serious was happening. She found Elias in the observation room, staring at a screen filled with legal text. Am I the cause? She asked softly. Elias turned. You're the reason, he corrected. There's a difference. She walked closer. They will not allow this to continue forever. I know, Elias said. That's why the next step matters. The next step came from the galaxy itself. A formal notice arrived, expanded tribunal review. This time it would include representatives from major powers. This time the outcome would set precedent. This time Saley would be allowed to speak freely. That alone shocked many. The expanded tribunal chamber was vast and cold, floating in open space. Transparent walls showed distant stars as if to remind everyone how small they were. Delegates filled the chamber, dozens of species, each carrying centuries of tradition and power. Elias stood at the center again. Saley stood beside him, not behind. The lead arbiter spoke. This tribunal will examine whether human conduct represents negligence, rebellion, or a lawful evolution of ownership. Elias listened carefully. Then the arbiter turned to Saley. "You will speak," it said. "Your words will be recorded." Saley felt her breath catch. This had never happened before. She looked at Elias. He nodded once, not permission, support. Saley spoke slowly, choosing each word with care. "I was born into servitude," she said. "So were my parents and their parents before them." The chamber was silent. "We were told it was mercy, that survival was enough, that obedience was peace." She paused. "But no one ever asked us what we lost." Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. "When Captain Ward received me, I expected the same life, commands, silence, usefulness." She looked around the chamber. "He did not command, he asked." Murmurs spread. "He did not take control, he gave space." The arbiter interrupted. "Do you deny that you are legally owned?" Saley swallowed. "I do not deny the law." "Then what is your claim?" the arbiter pressed. Saley straightened. "My claim is that power shows who we are, and the human showed restraint." The chamber erupted into noise. The arbiter struck the floor with a forced pulse. Silence returned. Elias was called to speak next. "You argue morality," a delegate said sharply. "But the galaxy runs on stability." Elias nodded. "So does Earth. That's why we built laws to limit power." "Ownership is power," another delegate said. "You reject it." "I redefine it," Elias replied. "Power without limits destroys trust. Humans learned that the hard way." The arbiter leaned forward. "What do humans do when given absolute authority?" Elias answered without hesitation. "We restrict ourselves." That answer traveled through the chamber like a shockwave. The tribunal recessed for deliberation. Hours passed. Saley sat quietly beside Elias in the waiting chamber. She felt lighter than she ever had before and more afraid. "If they rule against you," she said, "you may be punished." Elias nodded. "I know." "And if they rule against me," she continued, "I may be reassigned." Elias clenched his jaw. "That won't happen," he said. She looked at him. "You cannot control that." He met her gaze. "No, but I can make it expensive." For the first time, she smiled. When the tribunal returned, the chamber was tense enough to feel solid. The arbiter spoke slowly. "This tribunal recognizes that Captain Ward has not violated the letter of galactic law." A wave of reaction spread. "However," the arbiter continued, "his actions challenge its foundation." Elias held steady. "Therefore," the arbiter said, "this tribunal issues a conditional ruling." Saley held her breath. "Captain Ward retains legal responsibility for Saley of Keller. However, her testimony establishes her status as a cultural and historical witness." The arbiter looked directly at Elias. "She is no longer classified as labor." The chamber exploded in argument. The arbiter raised its voice. "This ruling applies only to this case." But everyone knew that did not matter. A crack had formed. News spread faster than ships could travel. A slave allowed to speak. A master praised for restraint. A ruling that admitted the law could bend. On distant worlds, enslaved beings watched recordings in secret. They did not cheer. They did not rebel. They remembered. Back aboard the Resolute, Saley removed the control band from her wrist for the first time. It did not deactivate, but it no longer mattered the same way. She held it in her hand, studying the metal. "I am still not free," she said. Elias nodded. "No." "But you're no longer invisible." She placed the band on the table. "That may be more dangerous." Elias smiled faintly. "Welcome to humanity." Far away, powerful beings met in private. "Humans are unstable," one said. "They weaken systems," said another. "They question ownership," a third warned. A fourth voice spoke quietly. "They remind slaves they are people." Silence followed, because that was the most dangerous thing of all, but quietly, like pressure building under stone. Across the galaxy, messages began to move, filtered, delayed, hidden inside trade data and public broadcasts. Words were chosen carefully, but the meaning was clear. Something had shifted. A slave had spoken, and the galaxy had listened. On the Resolute, Captain Elias Ward felt the weight of it every day. More ships passed nearby. Observation drones followed at legal distance. Requests for interviews arrived from alien media networks. Most were denied. "This is turning political," Elias said to his first officer. "It already is," the officer replied. "You're just in the center of it." Elias didn't argue. Saley noticed the change too. She was still classified as under Elias' responsibility, still not free. But crew members now treated her differently, not just kindly, but with respect. They asked her questions about her people, about her language, about what servitude meant. She answered carefully, truthfully. Each answer felt like stepping onto thin ice. One day, Saley received an unexpected request, a message routed through official channels. Request for consultation, cultural inquiry, Keller history. She stared at the screen. They want to hear from me, she said quietly. Elias read the message, his expression hardened. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he said. Why? Saley asked. Because now they're testing how far this goes. The consultation took place on a neutral station. Saley was escorted, not restrained, to a quiet chamber filled with observers, scholars, officials, diplomats, no guards. That alone was unheard of. She spoke for hours. She spoke about lost cities, about songs her people no longer sang, about education designed to make them useful, not curious. No one interrupted. When it ended, the chamber was silent. An alien scholar finally asked, "Do you wish for freedom?" Saley answered honestly. Yes. That answer spread faster than any ruling. Within days, unrest began, not riots, questions. On distant worlds, slaves began requesting hearings. Owners filed complaints about disruptive expectations. Administrators struggled to respond. The system had rules for rebellion. It had no rules for hope. The backlash came hard. A coalition of powerful species issued a formal warning to Earth. Human actions are destabilizing interstellar order. Correct this behavior or face sanctions. Earth Command called Elias immediately. You're creating a wave we can't control, the diplomat said. Elias stood firm. It was never going to stay small. We are not ready for open conflict, the diplomat warned. I'm not asking for conflict, Elias replied. I'm asking for consistency. The channel went quiet. Finally, the legal advisor spoke. There may be another option. The option was risky. Galactic law allowed owners to transfer property, usually for trade, but also for legal restructuring. Elias could transfer ownership to himself under human jurisdiction. It was rare. Complicated and dangerous. If approved, Saley would fall under human law, not galactic servitude codes. Elias read the proposal twice, then looked at Saley. This could fail, he said. Badly, Saley nodded. Everything important does. The filing went through. The response was immediate. Emergency objections flooded the system. The same powers that tolerated Elias' restraint now panicked at the idea of human legal control over a slave, because human law did not recognize ownership of people. At all. The final hearing was explosive. This is manipulation, one delegate shouted. A loophole abuse, Elias responded calmly. Your laws allowed it, ours do not allow slavery. Then you should not have accepted the reward, another accused. If I hadn't, Elias replied, Saley would be owned by someone else. Someone who would not ask her name. Silence followed. The arbiter spoke at last. Transfer approved. The chamber erupted. The moment the transfer completed, something fundamental changed. Saley was no longer a slave under human law. She was a protected person. Still under Elias' responsibility, but no longer owned. The galaxy had never seen such a thing. On the Resolute, Saley stood in the medical bay while a technician carefully removed the control band from her wrist. It powered down silently. No alarms, no resistance. Just a faint click. Saley stared at her bare wrist. I don't feel different, she said. Elias smiled softly. Give it time. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Trade sanctions were announced. Diplomatic ties strained. Some species accused humanity of cultural imperialism. Others quietly reached out, asking questions. On a distant world, a slave watched a recorded broadcast of Saley speaking. Not shouting, not begging, just speaking. Something inside them shifted. Earth Command issued a statement. Humanity did not seek to destabilize the galaxy. Humanity would not return a freed person to slavery. That was non-negotiable. Elias stood alone in the observation deck, watching stars burn cold and distant. He knew this was only the beginning. Saley joined him. What happens now? She asked. Elias answered honestly. Now the galaxy decides whether it wants peace with humans or comfort without them. She nodded. For my people, she said, comfort was always easier. Elias looked at her. Humans never trusted easy. Far away, powerful leaders met again. Humans are contagious, one said. They spread ideas, said another. They free slaves, a third hissed. A fourth voice spoke softly. And they do it legally. Silence followed, because laws could be rewritten, and precedent was a weapon more dangerous than any fleet. Saley slept that night without chains for the first time in her life. Freedom did not feel loud. It felt heavy, and real. It brought consequences. The moment Saley's status changed under human law, the galaxy reacted like a wounded animal, fast, loud, angry. Trade routes were restricted, joint patrols were canceled. Human diplomats were blocked from several neutral stations. News networks across alien space spoke of human interference and dangerous moral instability. On Earth, protests erupted in both directions. Some praised Elias Ward as a hero, others called him reckless, but one thing was clear: humanity could not go back. Captain Elias Ward received his recall order 3 days after the transfer. It was short, direct: return to Sol immediately. Command review pending. No praise. No blame, just facts. Elias read the message silently, then closed it. Saley stood nearby. "They are calling you home," she said. "Yes," Elias replied. "Is that punishment?" Elias considered the question. "Not yet." The journey back to human space felt longer than it should have. The Resolute traveled without escort. Alien ships watched from a distance but did not approach. The message was clear. You are alone now. Crew morale was tense but steady. No one blamed Saley. No one blamed Elias. They understood something bigger was happening. When the Resolute arrived near Earth, a human defense fleet met it. Not in formation, in respect. Saley watched through the viewport as the ships passed. "They protect you," she said. "They protect principles," Elias replied. "Sometimes that's harder." Elias faced review the moment he stepped off the ship. A closed chamber, military officials, civilian leaders, legal experts, no cheering, no anger, just careful eyes. "You have caused a diplomatic crisis," one official said. Elias nodded. "Yes." "You have damaged trade relations." "Yes." "You may have endangered future human expansion." "Yes." Silence followed, then the chair of the council spoke. "You also freed a sentient being without firing a weapon." Elias looked up. "You showed the galaxy who we are," the chair continued. "And now we must live with it." The decision came hours later. Elias Ward was removed from active command, not imprisoned, not dishonored, reassigned, permanent diplomatic reserve, a soldier no longer allowed to fight. The cost was real. Elias accepted it without complaint. Saley waited outside the chamber. When Elias emerged, she searched his face. "They took your command," she said. "Yes," Elias replied calmly. "Because of me?" Elias stopped. "No," he said firmly, "because of us." While Earth dealt with politics, the galaxy burned quietly. Not with war, with unrest. On multiple worlds, servitude systems slowed. Administrators hesitated. Owners feared scrutiny, not rebellion, reflection, a dangerous thing. Some species began limited reforms to ease pressure. Others doubled down. Punishments increased. Control tightened, and resistance followed. Saley began receiving messages, encrypted, hidden, from enslaved beings across the galaxy. They asked one thing: how did you survive hope? She did not know how to answer. Earth offered Saley asylum, full citizenship, a choice. She stood on a quiet hill overlooking the blue planet, feeling wind for the first time. "I could stay," she said. Elias stood beside her. "Yes, you'd be safe." She closed her eyes. "Safe," she repeated. "My people were safe once and silent." She opened her eyes again. "I need to go back." Elias turned sharply. "It's dangerous." "Yes," she agreed, "which means it matters." Human leadership debated for days. Sending Saley back into the galaxy would provoke outrage, but refusing her choice would break everything they claimed to stand for. In the end, they agreed. Saley would return not as property, not as refugee, but as an independent human alien envoy, protected but free. Elias was assigned to accompany her, not as a captain, as an advisor, a witness. They left Earth quietly. No ceremony, no speeches, just two beings and a ship moving back into uncertainty. As they traveled, news followed. Some worlds closed their borders to humans. Others opened channels, asking questions, listening, learning. On a distant station, an alien official watched Saley speak to a crowd. She did not shout, she did not accuse. She told her story about silence, about choice. About a human who refused to use power just because he had it. The crowd did not riot, they listened. Elias watched from the edge. "You're changing things faster than I ever did," he said quietly. Saley shook her head. "You gave me the words." Not all reactions were peaceful. Threats arrived, bounties whispered, warnings issued. Elias knew the danger was real, but so was the momentum. One night, as their ship traveled through open space, Sally asked a question. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Losing command, your career?" Elias looked at the stars. "No," he said, "I regret that it took us so long to act." She smiled softly. Far away, the same leaders met again. "Humans will not stop," one said. "They sacrifice power willingly," said another. "They accept loss," a third growled. A fourth voice spoke quietly. "That makes them unstoppable." Silence followed. The galaxy had survived wars. It had survived empires. But it had never faced a species willing to lose everything just to be right. And that scared it more than any fleet. As their ship moved onward, Sally rested peacefully. Not because the future was safe, but because for the first time it was hers. And Elias Ward, once a soldier, once a captain, now something else entirely, watched over the stars knowing the hardest battles were not fought with weapons. They were fought with choice. The galaxy did not collapse. It did not burn. It changed the way old stone changes, slow, cracking, never returning to its original shape. And at the center of that change was a truth no one could erase. Humans had been given ownership. And they had refused to use it. Sally stood before the assembly of free voices, a body that did not exist before humans arrived. Now it did. Delegates from dozens of species filled the hall. Some were former slaves. Others were citizens of worlds that had quietly ended servitude without public announcements. A few were from powerful empires, watching carefully, calculating costs. Sally no longer wore plain clothing. She wore no symbols of rank either. She did not need them. She spoke clearly. "Freedom is not a weapon," she said. "It does not destroy civilizations. It forces them to decide who they truly are." The chamber listened, because Sally was living proof. Elias Ward sat near the back, no uniform, no title, just a human. He had refused every offer of political power, refused command, refused fame. He stayed because someone needed to remember how this all began. Across the galaxy, slavery was no longer invisible. Some worlds abolished it entirely. Others redefined it into protected labor, then phased it out quietly. A few resisted violently, but they were fewer every year because slaves talked now, and the galaxy listened. Humanity's reputation changed. They were no longer just soldiers or traitors. They were known as something else, the species that could not be trusted with absolute power because they would not use it. An alien historian recorded it simply: "Many species conquered worlds, humans conquered ideas." Sally visited her homeworld again, not as property. Not as a ruler, as a free being. The cities were quieter than she remembered, smaller, scarred by history, but children ran openly, and elders argued in public. That was new. She stood before a group of young Keller and told them stories, not about chains, about choice. Elias walked through human streets again. No one recognized him. He liked it that way. He taught ethics at a small academy, not as doctrine, as discussion. He asked students one question again and again. "What do you do when you are allowed to do anything?" Some answered with ambition, some with fear, some with silence. Those were the ones he watched closely. The final galactic ruling came quietly. No ceremony, no celebration, a simple legal update. Sentient ownership is no longer recognized under interstellar law, not everywhere. Not fully, but enough that it would never return unchanged. Sally visited Elias one last time before returning to the stars. "I will keep traveling," she said. "There are still worlds that need to hear." Elias nodded. "They will," she hesitated. "And you?" He smiled. "I'll stay. Someone has to remind humans why this mattered." She reached out and took his hand, not as slave, not as master, as equals. As Sally's ship lifted into the sky, Elias watched until it vanished. He felt no pride, only peace. Far away in alien halls once filled with unquestioned power, leaders studied old records. They saw humans lose battles, lose trade, lose influence, and still refused to turn back. One leader spoke what many now understood. "Humans do not win by force." Another replied quietly. "They win by example." The galaxy survived, changed, wiser, and somewhere among the stars the story was told again and again. Of a soldier who accepted a reward, of a woman who was never truly owned, and of a species that proved the greatest strength was knowing when not to use power. Because when the universe handed humanity a chain, they broke it.